This is the Lexus ES. Now, it's another Lexus with a seemingly random collection of letters after its name, but what you need to know is this is a rival to the BMW 5 Series, the Mercedes E-Class, the Audi A6, the Jaguar XF and the Volvo S90. Now that is a tall order. Has Lexus been able to build a car that can rival that established competition? Well, that's the question I'm going to find out in this in-depth review. But before I answer that all-important question, make sure you follow me at JRR Bachelor and Carbuyer on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to the channel and switch on those notifications. So, the ES then, what is it? Well, the ES name has been a bestseller for Lexus for 30 years, but the UK has never had it. What we've had for the past couple of decades is the rear-wheel drive GS, a car that never really caught on here. This ES replaces the GS, and if its proportions look a little familiar, that's probably because underneath the swoopy body lies the new Toyota Camry. Now, there's no way you'd mistake this car for the ditchwater dull Toyota Camry. In fact, I don't think you'd mistake it for anything else in the executive car class. I happen to actually rather like it. It looks different, but that's just my view. Let me know what you think in the comments below. It's rather well priced too. Prices kick off at £35,000 and there's a huge amount of kit thrown in, like electric and heated leather seats and LED headlights. There's a racier looking F-Sport version and a luxurious Takumi model like this one here, with heated and cooling seats, a head-up display and a posh stereo system. Now, I really love this interior. Now, like most other Lexus models, the design is very simple, but it's also incredibly effective as well. It's not austere like you tend to find in a German car, that's for sure. Now, the build quality in here is actually very good indeed. It pretty much rivals the Germans. For instance, the doors. They thunk really nicely. The plastics and leather used in here is very nice indeed. And you can jazz it up in here as well. You can choose from different coloured leathers. You can choose from red, for example, which really is quite an eye-searing red. Now, the rest of the dashboard, the quality is very nice indeed. This stitching is used on the door and on the dashboard here. You may think that's used by a machine has done that. No, an actual human being has done that. There's also lots of nice little touches in here as well, like the climate control screens here. Now, when you adjust them, look at the way they change. Such a simple little thing, but it makes me smile. Now, the rest of the switchgear is lovely as well. This volume knob just feels really nice to use. Down here, in typical Japanese style, they've thought of everything because we've got heated and cooled seats and a heated steering wheel. There's also an auto setting for all of them so that your bottom doesn't get too hot or it doesn't get too cold either. There's even a CD slot there as well. Remember those CDs? And this particular car's also got a Mark Levinson stereo system and it sounds absolutely fantastic. Now, elsewhere, the storage is very good indeed. We've got a cup holder there with a place to store your phone, a couple of USB charging ports as well. We've got a massive cubby here, probably a bit too deep for your typical bottle, but you can make it a little bit smaller. There we go, with that little pop down bit. The glove box, it's a bit of a narrow entry, but it is very deep indeed. Here we've got a pretty good sized door bins as well, and this armrest here is actually quite clever. You open it, there's a wireless charging pad there, a really deep cubby, but you can also open it from the passenger side as well, which is really very clever indeed. Now, unfortunately, there are a few gripes in here. Firstly, it's the seating. Now, the seats themselves are very comfortable indeed. This passenger seat, I can even adjust it, which is perfect for the minicab market. But you tend to sit up too high. You can't get a nice low down driving position, which means that my knees are always banging up against this steering column, and this steering column is in its highest position. I'm not especially tall, but that really does grind my gears. Another thing that grinds my gears is the fact there's not much headroom here either. Like I say, I'm only just over 5'10", and I feel as though I'm sitting on top of the car rather than sitting in it. Now, whilst I said earlier on the plastics in here are very good, there is one particular place that it really lets the side down, and that's this area here. Really, can you hear that? scratchy plastic. Now it's got a really sharp edge to it, and I'm sorry, that's not what I expect from a car costing 40 to 50,000 pounds. But all of this pales into insignificance when we come on to the infotainment screen. Now, the basic ES and the F Sport come with a much smaller display with an ugly border around it. This top spec Takumi comes with a much wider screen. The display itself is not too bad actually, but it's the functionality I have a problem with. Now, you don't get a rotary knob, or it's not touch sensitive at all. The way you control it is with this touchpad here. Now, you find yourself having to make sure you press the right thing, and the whole pad is oversensitive and incredibly difficult to use. I find this system quite dangerous to use on the move because I'm having to take my eyes off the road to actually control it. This really does let the ES down massively. It makes you realise how good the Mercedes E-Class, and in particular the BMW 5 Series, is for infotainment. In the back, and the first thing you notice is the amount of knee room you've got. Look at this. There's absolutely tons of it. It's like sitting in the back of a Mercedes S-Class, and these seat bases are nicely angled, so you get lots of thigh support, and they're very comfortable indeed. You also get an armrest, as you'd expect, but it's no normal armrest, because on this top spec Takumi model, we've got a big cubby there, little couple of cup holders, which is very nice. But the big thing about this is the fact that these seats are electrically adjustable. Look at that. And the same with that one over there as well. Fantastic. They're heated, as you'd expect. I can adjust the climate control. I can adjust the CD player and the radio, for example. And there's even an rear electric blind. Now, talking about blinds, what with that one being electric, you'd expect these ones to be electric, wouldn't you? But they're not. They're manually adjustable. So you do that. And there's a little one for this little piece of glass as well. How sweet. But also rather unusual. But elsewhere, you've actually got a good amount of storage. You've got nice little door bins there, these airline style seat pockets, a couple of USB charging ports and a 12-volt socket as well. The only bad things back here is the fact that if you do intend to carry a third person, they will be sitting like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, because they're going to be sitting like this, and it's not particularly comfortable. And the main reason for that is the headroom. Now, whilst knee room is absolutely brilliant, headroom isn't great. Like I say, I'm just over 5'10", and my head is pretty much touching the roof, especially when I sit back. It is hitting the top of the roof there. If you're over 6 foot, you really are going to struggle.
The boot, however, is a bit of a letdown. It's considerably smaller than a Mercedes E-Class is, and in fact is beaten by most of its rivals. Not only that, but the seats don't fold down flat, meaning the space you see here is your lot. But in fairness, you don't buy these cars for the amount of space on offer, you buy them for the way they drive. Now, the ES, unlike its rivals, only comes with one engine. Lexus likes to call it a self-charging hybrid, but forget the hyperbole. It's a conventional hybrid we've seen for years. So that means a 2.5-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine up front, an electric motor, and a battery pack that charges with brake regeneration. You don't plug it in. There's a CVT gearbox, so effectively there's just one gear, but there are 6 steps to mimic gear changes. Total power is 215 brake horsepower, putting the ES on par with a BMW 525D or a Mercedes E220D.
Now, the question we want to know now is, can the ES match up against its German rivals when it comes to driving? And the answer to that question is no. But it's not quite as straightforward as that.
The ES gets a new type of suspension that Lexus is calling a world first. It's slightly grandiose to call it unique, but in the executive car class at least, the ES's suspension is different. In short, the new suspension has a new valve that ensures the right level of damping is applied at the right time, improving low-speed ride and making the car corner flatter at speed. It works pretty well, with a plush ride around town and an even smoother one on the motorway.
The really clever thing is that when it stiffens the suspension up for fast cornering to prevent the body rolling, it doesn't mean the ride is harsh and uncomfortable. It feels just as cosseting as it was around town. And that is a real USP in this part of the class, because normally, especially with the Germans, if you want tight body control, it means you have to have sharp, uncomfortable suspension. But in the ES, there's no compromise whatsoever.
However, the F-Sport gets an adaptive version of the ES's trick suspension, which adds an unpleasant jitter even on some pretty smooth roads. It gets worse as you cycle up through the ES's driving modes too.
Now, along with this nice, clever suspension, the steering is actually pretty good too. It's nicely accurate, really nicely weighted, and the chassis is nice and grippy too. It's a surprisingly nice car to drive. Now, it won't worry a BMW 5 Series at all, and it doesn't offer the nice blend of agility and polish that you get from an Audi A6 either. Now, Toyota and Lexus are really getting the hang of these engines and CVT transmissions. I mean, they're so much better than they used to be, and we've seen that with the Corolla, the CHR, and various other Lexus models like the UX. But in this part of the market, this engine and gearbox is a bit of a letdown. Now, it's fine if you're just pootling around, you drive this car within its limits, you don't ask too much of it, it's absolutely fine. But when you want a bit of brisk acceleration, the engine revs soar and you don't really make any quick progress. I mean, compared to a diesel engine in a 5 Series, an A6 or an E-Class or an S90, this thing really can't hold a candle to those cars. It just can't offer the same level of brisk acceleration, and it makes a bit of a din as well. Now, you may think I'm being a little bit unfair comparing this car to diesel rivals. If I compare it to the plug-in hybrid competition like the Volvo S90 T8 or the BMW 530e or the Mercedes E350e, this ES still doesn't stand up very well compared to those cars either. It's just a bit rough around the edges when it comes to simple things like brisk acceleration. But like I say, if you drive this car sedately and the way that Lexus wants you to drive it, it's absolutely fine. Just don't expect to be getting anywhere particularly quickly or quietly. If I had to sum this car up in one word, it would be soothing. It's a very soothing car to drive. There have been many times this week where I've just been very excited about getting into this car because I know that I'm going to have a stress-free, refined and comfortable commute home, for example, or a little dash to the office is unstressful. It's just very, very soothing. And in that regard, the ES does the job perfectly. It's different from its main German competition because it offers something very different. If you want a stress-free, refined, comfortable car, and when you consider the soothing driving experience, the huge amount of standard kit you get thrown in, and the fact it offers very, very good CO2, MPG and BIK ratings, I mean, it's a pretty competitive and compelling car is the ES. Just don't expect it to set your pants on fire. Go in with that mindset, and this car is very impressive.
If you enjoyed this review, then give my BMW 5 Series video a watch and our Executive Cars playlist. Click the Carbuyer logo to subscribe to the channel and leave your comments below. Thanks for watching.